Hey everybody, Stephen Bogren here from Pro Physique, and today what I'm talking about is prep and life.
My name is Steven, and this is our video about health and fitness things. And I work for Pro Physique, and I am just a guy with a fitness thing for you.
Woo! Alright, so I hope you've all had a wonderful weekend. Show has happened, it went, and as you see on the thumbnail, had some phenomenal competitors, this one being Michelle. And Michelle is definitely the reason I wanted to talk about this topic today, because it was Michelle's first show. And let me start off by saying, for those of you that don't ever want to prep or don't ever want to do a show, there's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of reasons to want to do a show, there's plenty of reasons to not want to do a show. And you shouldn't be feeling like you need to be pushed in any way, shape, or form direction-wise. But Michelle decided that she wanted to do a show. She obviously has a great physique, crazy shape, great insertions, and if she does decide that she's going to continue to compete, she's going to do very, very well. She ended up doing really well in her first show. She got 3rd in open, 4th in true novice, in a large show that a lot of people come to get in front of pro-level judges. So once again, congratulations on how you did. Very, very proud of you, Michelle. But that's not the main point of this video. The main point of this video is because I was so proud of how she did in terms of understanding importance, priority, and managing both prep and personal life, as well as professional life. And that can be really, really tough. Most of us that don't have a lot of different things to juggle and maybe can really put ourselves into prep wholeheartedly and just focus on only that can have a hard time with this. So when we add in family and a professional life and all the other things, prep can be very difficult, particularly to manage along with all of those other considerations. So we do want to take a moment to step back and understand that prep and life can absolutely go together, but that will look different for each and every individual. This is an important consideration for us to have because some of us have different priorities in life. And so we want to understand that first and foremost. So let's start with family. Let's start with family. And we'll just call family husbands, boyfriends, fiancés, kids, parents, whatever it might be, any of our personal relationships. And understanding that that has its own time investment. And it needs to and should always be a priority because those don't go away when prep ends. They're there when prep starts, they're there when prep finishes, they're there when we never are going to compete again. Those personal relationships are always going to be a part of our lives to some degree, yes. For me, understanding what that means for each of us as an individual is very important. If it is very important to you that you are in your kids' lives, that you are treating your significant other well, that we're spending time with them, that we have the ability to do things like date nights or whatever it might be, that is very important for us to know because it will change the way that we have to do prep. That may or may not change the expectations we have for the outcome of prep, but for somebody who has those considerations, it's important for us to be realistic with you as we get going, as opposed to somebody who maybe isn't in a relationship, they just go to work, or they, prep can really be their main focus, their main goal. They can really just throw themselves into that bodybuilding prep, the diet, the cardio, the exercise, those things, where that may not be the same case for all of us. I think within that, not only understanding our time constraints, where we want to put our time into, what we need to do, spending time with our kids, spending quality time with our significant others, those kind of things, because they're very important. They're also important because of prep, because those can be stress management things. But we also have to be aware of how we're treating those people as well. Everybody's going to be kind of grumpy, a little bit irritable. Those are just things that come with that low body fat, the high cardio, the fatigue, and those other parts of dieting and prep. However, that doesn't mean that we cannot be prepared to deal with them in a manner that is going to be beneficial for those personal relationships. I remember just hearing about this individual, and it had nothing to do with prep in the story, and it always stuck with me. And I think it does apply very well to life in general, but prep particularly. They would come home from work, and before they came home, before they got in the door, they would actually stop down the street, they would park. And they would essentially do like some meditation, some reframing, and some restructuring. And I think that this can be very, very beneficial for us in terms of personal life, and whether that's work, whether that's prep, whatever it might be, just in general, to reframe where we're at with our mindset. Yes, we're probably going to be a little bit grumpier. Yes, we're probably going to be a little bit more irritable. But can we reframe our mindset before we put ourselves into that position? Can I get done with my cardio? Can I get done with my workout? Have my food with me and maybe sit down and do some meditation or reframe before I come into my home life, where that mood state, that fatigue, that irritability could and probably will have a vast impact on those personal relationships. Yes, I can. Is it always going to be perfect? No, probably not. But we can be aware of that. And again, with the time constraint stuff, with work and everything else, we may need to take a different approach and have maybe some different expectations. But those things can be manageable and bearable. Understanding that personal relationships are probably going to be there not only before but also after, we do want to make sure that we're doing things to deal with those well and to upkeep those relationships at least as much as possible. And of course, explaining to our loved ones as much as possible that what we're doing will cause maybe some fatigue and some crankiness, and then being open and willing to receive that feedback from our loved ones about how we're addressing our crankiness and our fatigue and how we might be reacting with them on some of those things. I haven't met many people that don't get some of that fatigue and crankiness, but we don't necessarily have to take it out on our loved ones, and there are some things that we can do to be aware of that to keep ourselves from doing so. So that's my big part one, of this life stuff. It's the family relationships, it's all of those things. So my big part two is work. Working relationships are very important, and obviously we all have to pay the bills. This will change for different people. This can be much more stressful on individuals who do what we will call shift work. So where you go in for 10, 12 hours, you work a few days a week, and you have the other days of the week off. Or any work where if you have a lot of responsibilities. Again, shift work is a good example of this because those two go together. So there's a lot of firefighters, EMS, nurses, medical doctors. We see those things go together. This creates another level of how we have to manage prep within that, making sure that we're pushing hard enough to get where we need to be so we feel good about being on stage, we get what we want out of it, but we're also paying attention to what our body is telling us so we know, okay, do we need refeeds? Do we need diet breaks? Maybe we can't do daily cardio, so we have to work around that and utilize some other things. Making sure that we're paying attention to life in terms of work. We're able to think, we're able to perform our jobs. Again, those personal relationships also happen in work. So making sure that we're not being too easily frustrated with the individuals at work, and being aware of how we interact with maybe patients, customers, coworkers. I know for me, this was something that I definitely struggled with when I was working at the restaurant sometimes and prepping, because it would be very easy to get frustrated and to let some of my fatigue level index get into the way at work. And this is why we want to be aware of that. Understanding that there may be times where we push, we pull back. That communication between you and your coach is absolutely pivotal, or you and yourself. And then making sure that we're doing the right things to manage that situation. It might be something as simple as meal timing and meal choice. I always like to make sure that I have larger meals and maybe less meals, because I actually feel a little bit more satiated and full. But where am I putting those meals? Am I putting them around my workouts to help me perform? That can be great. Do I need to have that food spaced out or done in a very specific way to help me get my work done for the day on maybe days where I need to work? Well, that's also another very important question we want to make sure that we're addressing as we go into that. Oftentimes, because prep is very overwhelming to a point, right? It can be almost consuming. There's the cardio, the diet, the exercise, everything else, the posing, getting ready for show day, all those kind of things. It can be very easy for us to let that overshadow maybe some of the other big life things, but we do want to keep them in mind. We want to keep them as a priority, and that's really what today's video is all about, is making sure that we're paying attention to those things and setting ourselves up in a manner to where we're able to keep them in our lives and keep them in our lives at a very high quality and level. So I hope this helps y'all. I know a lot of you guys are getting into prep and diets this year. Remember, it doesn't necessarily have to just be a prep. We can get and see the same kind of things in just normal hard diets when we're pushing for a lot of fat loss. So for those of you guys who maybe aren't prepping for shows but still working really hard, keep this in mind for yourselves as well, and let's have a great week. All right.